Hey everybody, happy Tuesday. The days have really run together. Today was day 23 on the road, but 2 more days and I get to head home. Tack för sist, välkommen tillbaka. Thanks for being here, thanks for watching. I appreciate it. Today's video is going to be a little bit deeper again. It seems like there's a fair bit of interest in my experiences in the Mormon church and leaving the Mormon church and stuff like that. I don't want every video to be about that. But, you know, there's a big part of my life that was tied up with that church. And today I wanted to talk about an experience that was kind of a defining moment for me, because I remember when it happened thinking, this is really odd. And the date I'm talking about is June 8th, 1978. I remember it clear as a bell. I remember when I was told the news, and if you grew up in the Mormon church or if you're LDS, or you just know a lot about it, you know what I'm talking about. I can remember where I was. I was in the hallway of my school. I can't remember if school was still going on, if we didn't get out of school till the end of June. I don't remember, but I might have been there for basketball practice or a dance. I don't remember, but I remember being in the hallway of the school, my high school. Our junior high and high school were joined together. And one of my friends who was also Mormon came up and said, "Did you hear the news?" I'm really sorry about this. Just, I take allergy pills. It's just, I go through this every spring. Anyway, if you know the church, you know I'm talking about the day that the church lifted the ban on African Americans, black people having the priesthood in the church, being able to go through the temple, get endowments. And for a little bit of background, you know, I grew up in this, between Norway and then this little town in the middle of nowhere, Canada. And I just didn't have a lot of experience with that. But the miniseries Roots had come out the year before that, January of 1977, I believe, when I was only 13. But I watched that miniseries. I was glued to that miniseries. I think it was 8 nights in a row. And there's no way to say it other than it just affected me deeply. I could not believe that humans could treat other humans the way people, not just in this country. Slavery is a thing that has existed the world over for the history of mankind. It drives me crazy when somebody says it's an American sin and it's American creation. It's not. My ancestors, the Vikings, had slaves. White people have been enslaved. Black people have been enslaved. Every race of people have been enslaved. There are slaves in the world today. China has slaves as we speak. It's all reprehensible. A human cannot own another human being. And I remember watching that show as a 13-year-old and just having it affect me so deeply. And I never had that experience again until I watched the movie, I think it's called 12 Years a Slave, which was several years ago, but long after Roots. And I felt the same way. I was just like, how can anybody do this to another human being? So that's my background going into when they lifted this ban in the Mormon church. Spencer W. Kimball was the president / prophet when that happened. He's the one that signed my mission call when I got called to go to Norway. So I have a paper somewhere with his signature on it. He claims he had a revelation from God that that ban should be lifted. And no matter what you think about him, I got to give him credit for that. He got rid of an awful just stain on the church. Now, for a little bit of background, Joseph Smith is the dude that founded the Mormon church. You know, he's the one that said he had the first vision with God and Jesus. When Joseph Smith was in charge of the church, black people were allowed to have the priesthood. They were ordained into it. It was Brigham Young in 1852 that put this ban in effect. Now, I didn't know a lot about Brigham Young when I was in the church. I graduated from Brigham Young University. But I've done a fair bit of research on him since then. And this will probably offend some people, and I'm sorry if it does. That's not my intent. But Joseph Smith seemed like a pretty good dude that, whether you believe he had this vision or not, he seemed like a good guy. And he didn't exclude people. Brigham Young, from some of my research, just seems like he might have been a racist. And I can't say that definitively because it's 175 years ago. I don't know. But he put some things into the kind of laws of the church that were not part of it when Joseph Smith was in charge. And if you're not familiar, Joseph Smith and his brother were killed by a mob. They were actually in jail at the time and were shot and killed. He was martyred. The Mormons, they called themselves the Saints, were persecuted badly. You know, they fled from New York to Nauvoo to eventually Utah because they just got chased and persecuted and murdered and beaten. And I feel the same way about that I feel about slavery. I don't understand treating people like that. And so I have a lot of respect. I've read a few books on the history of the church, especially the beginning, the founding of it. And I feel the same way as when and I'm not comparing slavery to being a Mormon or the persecution they dealt with, but some of those early Mormons dealt with some severe, horrible persecution, murders, just anyway, that's not really the point of this video here. So when I heard that news on June 8th, 1978, that ban had been lifted, some more background there. So Brigham Young's reasoning for putting this ban in effect, one of the main ones, and you can debate this with me if you want, and that's cool, is that he claimed that if you were black, it was the curse of Cain. And that's why you had dark skin, which is just horrific. It's horrible. Slavery was pretty rampant in 1852 still. The Civil War hadn't happened yet. And like I said, I think Brigham Young just kind of went along with the flow of that. And it's not cool. I don't want to go too deeply in there because I know I will offend some people. But Brigham Young did some things that I can't agree with. And that's definitely one of them. When I heard that news, I remember thinking as a 14-year-old kid, why were they ever banned in the first place? The church also, for a long time, now I will give the church credit now. They have disavowed all of that. They said it was all bad doctrine. It should have never happened. I don't believe that the Mormon church today is a racist church. And I'll give them credit for that. But, similar things were said about Native Americans. Where I grew up in Canada, now when I grew up there, they were called Indians. And I had lots of friends that were Indians. They called themselves Indians. I know that's not the term now. I think they call themselves First Nation in Canada now, or First Peoples. And of course, in the States, it's mostly Native Americans. But that's another thing that comes in the Book of Mormon. You had the Nephites and the Lamanites. And there are a lot of people that think that the reason they had darker skin was because of another curse. As a 14-year-old, I thought it was ridiculous. How did grown men and women, mostly men, let's face it was almost all men back then. I mean, as far as, the LDS Church is still very male-centric. They have expanded roles for women now compared to what it was 30, 40, 50 years ago. But it's the same as when I watched the miniseries Roots. I could not comprehend how you could look at another human being and do that to somebody, to treat somebody like that. I would have a hard time treating my worst enemy like that. Now, if somebody threatens my family or me or my friends or something, I'm going to stand up for them. And, depending on the circumstances you're in, sometimes you have to defend yourself fiercely. That's not what any of this was. It was just, well, it all went back to Brigham Young. Let's just put it where it was. Joseph Smith did not have this ban in effect. And there are actually several sects of the Mormon Church that broke away because Brigham Young became the next president. A lot of them just didn't think he was the legitimate successor to Joseph Smith. And so you hear about like the FLDS and, these polygamous cults and different branches that have broken away. And a lot of it goes back to that they think once Joseph Smith died, I used to know this history better, but that, somebody from his lineage should have been the successor. But I'll say this, I'm very glad that that's not there anymore. I never understood, because there were African American people that joined the church even when that ban was in effect. I don't understand that. I've known people that are gay that are members of the church. I don't understand that. I don't understand why you would want to be part of something where they look at you as either evil or sinful or any of that. I can't comprehend that. I mentioned this in one of my videos when I was talking about excommunication. If they ever decided to call me in, well, first of all, I wouldn't go. It's like, you can do whatever you want. I'm not participating. I've mentioned I have not taken my name off the records just because I just don't care. It doesn't mean anything to me. And I've had several of you comment and say you need to go do that. Well, I don't know, maybe someday I will, but it's not some urgent thing for me. I don't feel any necessity to go do that. But I wanted to point out, first of all, that was a horrible practice, but also to give the church credit for getting rid of it. To give Spencer W. Kimball the credit he deserves for getting rid of that. And I guess if you are a member of one of those communities and you join the church, you're a better person than me. And you can look past that. And maybe I should look past that. But I lump it all together. Like I said, it's not the same as slavery. I'm not comparing it even a little bit. But the fact that you put a group of people kind of a peg lower or 2 pegs lower or 3 pegs lower is reprehensible. People are people all over this world. The only way I judge people is by how they treat other people. I don't care what your religion is, your beliefs, who you love. if you're part of a religion that hurts people, then I'm going to look down on you negatively. But if you're part of a religion that tries to do good, which I really do believe the Mormon Church does a lot of good. For those of you that don't know this, the Mormon Church is one of the biggest givers of charity in the world. When there are disasters in the world, the Mormon Church is one of the first to donate, give, help, and help a lot. It's not minor. Granted, they are an extremely wealthy organization, but they are very charitable. They do a lot of good in the world. I believe they do way more good than bad. I've said it many times. I'm glad I grew up in the family and in the church, because they teach a lot of great values and morals. And, I tried to, when I was young and, well, let's just call it naive, I could overlook some of those things. But even as a kid, I couldn't overlook that. So I was very excited when I heard that news on June 8th, 1978, that, okay, maybe my church is not a racist church anymore. Because I just never saw people that way. I never did. Even growing up in that little tiny town in Tabor, Alberta, you'd think it was just all white. That's not what it was at all. We had people from different countries there. We had the First Peoples, lots of them. Some of my best friends growing up. In fact, one of my really good friends when I was a kid passed away just a couple of years ago. I hadn't seen him in probably 40 years, but when I got the news, it affected me. And by the way, he was the greatest athlete I've ever known in my life. Native American dude, just a badass. And I know there are people that may watch this video and think I'm an idiot for thinking the way I do. I hope we can just look at people and judge them based on who they are, not what they look like. I'm a fan of Martin Luther King Jr. Now, I know he's a very flawed person, and next year a whole bunch of records get released about him. He had lots of affairs, screwed around a lot, and I don't condone that. But the man was brilliant, and he brought something to this country that needed to be brought. And one of my favorite sayings of his, and I'm not going to get it exactly right, but it's close, is judge a man by his character, not by the color of his skin. And I think if we could all do that, the world would be a better place. That seems to be going out of fashion amongst certain groups of people, which blows my mind. Anyway, like I said, a little bit deeper video, but that's something I don't know why that popped into my head in the last couple of days. I was thinking about that and thinking that so I did a little bit of research to kind of nail down when it first started, because I was almost positive Joseph Smith didn't have that view, and I was right. Put it on Brigham Young. That's where the blame goes. So, and give Spencer Kimball the credit. So I know some of this might sound slammy on the church, and that's not what I'm trying to do. I say it all the time. I live in a Mormon community. In fact, there's a good mix. I mean, there's lots of people that are like me, kind of are members, but haven't attended in decades. There's non-Mormons there, and we have a great neighborhood, and people treat each other with respect, and I love living in Utah. Lots of my family are LDS. I have nothing but respect for it. My mom and dad are active LDS, very devout, and I have the greatest respect for them and their beliefs. I just don't share the beliefs. I believe in God, but I guess I just believe in a different way. And I'm sure I'll get some comments again in this video. Every time I do any kind of religious video, you got to accept Jesus into your life. And I do, but in my own way. And I'm happy with it. You know, I had a woman on a video a couple of videos ago say, I hope you find your way back. Well, I don't see that happening. I'm much happier since leaving. My whole family is happier. I mean, my immediate family, my wife and my kids are happier. So anyway, love to hear your comments. Love to hear your insights. Love to read your disagreements. It's all cool. If you're respectful in your disagreements or criticisms, I will probably respond to you, and I will try to be respectful back. I'm not looking to make enemies. That's the last thing I want to do. I'm like the friendliest, most outgoing dude. I try to be nice to everybody. It's very seldom I meet somebody that we don't at least end up friendly, you know. Sometimes you get a vibe, like I did the video the other night about the creepiest experience of my life when I am pretty sure I ran into that murderer who probably was a serial killer. And yeah, my boss never passed on the information that I gave him, and that haunts me still. But yeah, I think if we just try to treat each other with respect. Just real quickly too, I did a video about the American dream. To me, it's still alive. And I had several young people write and say, you're an idiot, you're a boomer, you don't know what you're talking about. I do have kids between 25 and 35 years old, so I do have a pretty good idea. And I have lots of friends that have kids. They're not kids, they're grown people in their 20s and 30s that are doing very well. I know it's harder now, and I'm not going to get into that now. I am going to do another video about that though, to address some of the comments that I got, because there were quite a few, and I respect that. You know, I'm not saying you're wrong. I just want to give my opinion on that. So I'm going to call it for now, and again, I appreciate you watching, and sorry, got a phone call coming in. I hope you have a fantastic night. Tack för denna gång. Vi snackas igen snart. Ha det gott. Peace. Love.